Almost ready here. Another minute. Okay, so welcome back, everyone, and to those of you who are new, welcome. I'm going to start by sharing some background on Ms. Brooks. Nyshia Brooks is a community health organizer and founder of the Black Butterfly Societe, a nonprofit breaking ground and barriers in cultivating empowerment, education, and self-care in the garden of personal growth. She's currently providing community organizing coordination, program development, and operations management for the NKB Lab LLC principal consultant, experimenting with creativity and creating solutions by connecting assets and talents within communities. She is consulting for the Minority Health and Wellness Project, board coordinator of community services and programming, dedicated to the overall health and wellness of communities by centralizing community partners, reconnecting them to local residents. They are committed to serving. He provides consulting for crime survivors, safety and justice, chapter coordinator, Mansfield, Ohio, advocating for survivors of crime and the communities they live in, bringing awareness to the systemic barriers that prevent the services and resources needed to allow victims of crime to heal. Like she is developing a legacy to change her life and the lives of others for the better, especially for children. I'm gonna the too dark. Can you still see us here? Hear us?
Yeah, I can see, and I can, well, what I can't see is not due to you. It's just I don't have my glasses on.
Okay, well, maybe you can just start us off by telling a little bit about yourself and what you do, and we can go from there. And I want to remind everyone that this is a discussion. So go ahead and sign in when you see the paper. And that also stands for, if you do say something, it's voluntary. And if Nyshia decides that we want to put this online, then your statement is also included. If you don't want your statement included, make a note on the paper, that's all. Okay, share a little bit about yourself and the work you do.
Okay, well, that introduction was super fancy. That's real Berkeley. And I am not that fancy. I am, but I'm not. It's I really want everyone to get really comfortable. Because the other speakers that you're gonna hear in these upcoming weeks, I'm not there yet. I am still on the struggle bus when it comes to navigating social connection, nonprofit work, things of that nature. We'll start off with some of the places that Alan was speaking on that I had been working with simultaneously. I really was that busy. Well, in January of this year, I decided to end my contract with Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice and with the Minority Health and Wellness Project. Nothing negative, and we'll get into why that's going to happen to even some of you as you move forward. It was with Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. At the time, I had been coordinating services for them in the Mansfield area in Ohio for, I'd want to say, nearly 3 years, which was great. It's an awesome organization. I really encourage any of you and all of you to go to their website at cssj.org.
Can you actually share a little bit about that? What is Crime Survivors and what
Yep.
does that organization do?
So Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice is an organization that unifies voices within collective neighborhoods and spaces and educates those who are victims of crime and help people to understand the levels and various natures of crime. Often we'll think only like gun violence or sexual violence or domestic violence are the violences that we're focusing upon. But there's all kinds of types of violences that are occurring and contributing to poverty models that we're all being plagued by, whether we're conscious of it or not. So instead of necessarily segregating people by the type of violence that they may have occurred, that they may have endured, just collectively bringing them together while also being empathetic to what their story is, what their journey is, and using those stories to connect people while educating them on the different resources and availabilities that may exist within their state. Because even though it's a national model, they manage them from state to state because the language, the legal language may change from state to state, as you may well know. And so the goal is to educate communities, those who are survivors, those who are family of survivors, those who are supporters of survivors. So that really allows them to broad range, reach as many people as possible. And it allows them to target audiences that are often affected by crime. Those audiences are usually people of color, people who are in poverty, and those who want to change that narrative. I'm from Mansfield, Ohio. Ohio is the weirdest place in the world. Okay. We are every type of crazy that you think we are. All the stuff they say about us in the movies is true. It is what it is. I am surrounded by cornfields. You'll go to one city, bounce to the next. There's a cornfield in between, and I don't hang out in the cornfields. I don't. Like, everyone always thinks that like I would, like my out of town friends are like, well, yeah, what about, they think I know about farming. They think I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Although I'm an advocate of farmers. So we'll talk about that later too, but I am not the one. I am a recovering plant killer and I am on probation. And what had happened, well, we'll talk about that later. But anyway,
So can I ask you another question, by the way? You said
Sure.
crime survivors and you're talking about survivors. I think some people are familiar with terms that are maybe overused, victim and perpetrator. Is the idea of a survivor, does that include only victims, perpetrators, or is it everybody and the neighborhood, or what?
It can be any and all. It could be a person who was a perpetrator and a survivor. Most of your perpetrators, quote unquote, they are survivors of a crime as well. You may be a survivor of a systemic crime. That's more common than most people realize. It doesn't have to be a physical violence. It could be, in my area where I'm from, I live in a prison city, within a prison county, within a prison state, within a nation that industrializes prison. That's a high concentration of crime and poverty that's going to exacerbate in that area, because we have like 3 prisons here, maybe 4. I think we have 3 prisons and a prison camp. And Mansfield's not that small. Without the population of the main prison, we would not even reach 50,000 residents, or the population wouldn't be at 50,000. If you're not at 50,000, then you're considered a township or a village. And it wasn't always like that. We used to be an epicenter and our population was well above 50,000, but economics change. And when those economics move deliberately and strategically, because economics moved so that one space could be built up for commercial enterprise while leaving the other space open for urban poverty, which is another moneymaker. Poverty makes money. It's a moneymaker. It makes
Can you explain that a
billions.
little bit about, because I think that this is a subject that you're basically getting a crash course on what some people refer to as blight, but essentially economics, growth, exploitation, and then economics moving out of the area and resulting poverty, which you're discussing as essentially also an economy. So can you break that down a little bit more for people?
Sure. So for Ohio, the last time I checked, I want to say it was 2020 because I've been in and out of consciousness since 2020 hit. Listen, I don't even know. It's been fog here and there, but I was really good at my data points. So 2020 was about the last time I checked, but I want to say that Ohio was gaining a revenue of $1.9 billion per year off of its prison industry. Well, happy, healthy people don't go to prison, right? I mean, you all seem pretty conscious and you're looking good. I'll say that. I don't know if you are good, but you look good. Your skin's glowing. You plan to go to prison anytime soon? I don't think so. Because people in college don't go to prison. Why? Because your goals have changed. Your thoughts have changed. Your drive has changed. You have to have a support system and you have to have a plan. Even, I don't care how much of a hot mess, how many ramen noodles you're eating, I don't care. You cannot make it that far without some type of direction and support. You may not have the best support. You may not even have all the support you need, but I promise you, you right now are so far ahead of those who are not there with you. And it's simply because there is a community. Even if you feel isolated, there's still a community of people on that campus who are still experiencing this educational experience similar to yours, even if it's not exact. And poverty, even though it's massive, you're isolated. You could be sitting right next to somebody and be isolated, you know? So but you can't
a little bit more about how you describe the experience of community in college that creates certain outcomes, but then also you're basically describing a prison economy that's related to also a community and a community of isolation. Can you describe that a little bit more?
And this is not to negate any issues or concerns or challenges that you may experience or you're going to experience in your higher learning experience, because those issues are real too. But they're different. And the resources that you may have there, even if they're not exactly what you need, there's something. When you're sitting in the pool of poverty, it's kind of like a dirty tub, like you just swimming in your own economical, social injustice filth. And you're just trying to just survive in it. So the needs are different. That's why you'll see more commonly for a person who comes from poverty, if they make it to college, like a university, not just like a local college is cool, but it's not the same when you get out and you are really in the experience of living on campus and all that. You'll see those students almost have to separate completely because the world is completely different and they have to be very careful how they navigate their own resources because everybody in the family needs something. Nonprofit is an organizational system. It's all based on needs assessment. You can't even have a nonprofit if you don't have a needs assessment. That means everybody got to be tore up. Everybody got to have a problem. It ain't based off of happiness. It's based off, what's your problem? Most businesses are based off of a needs assessment too, but sometimes it can be fun. but they're not that different. But nonprofit, someone told me this and it was very intelligent. They said nonprofit is business, but it's on steroids. It is true, because it's a very important entity within the current model that we're navigating under, because you have government, you have nonprofit organizations, you have for-profit businesses, but nonprofit organizations is the only entity that can braid funding from federal funding and private funding and incorporate and disseminate it throughout the communities. So the world of nonprofit is very important, but make no mistake about it, it is infested with narcissists. I am so serious. You will see some of the ugliest things. You will see, you talk about toxic positivity, this is where it's at.
Can you explain that concept briefly? Toxic positivity.
Well, okay, you all know, you've all heard of Disneyland, right? It's the happiest place on earth, right? It's, you know, you look at it, it's appealing. It's the cartoon. We've been investing in Disney all our life. We were raised on it. I swear I was several princesses growing up. I mean, I know all the words to so many movies. We've been singing the songs. And when we finally get to go, it's like, it's magical. But it all depends on when you are processing it and seeing it. When you're a kid, it's fantastic. But if you're the adult paying for everything, might not feel that fantastic. If you have an accident at Disney, you might see something different, because they've arranged it to where there can't be any turmoil there, right? So if you die on Disney property, which could be anywhere, because it's bigger than what you think, because they own a lot of stuff. You die, let somebody die. They're going to scoop you up, put you in the back, put you behind one of those green things that blend into, because they even got the colors, the paints, to where you can't even notice it. You don't even know. So there's a lot of makeup. There's a lot of cover up. There's a lot of things, dirt under the rug that you don't know about. There's a lot of contracts. Disney is big, not because it's been so creative on its own all the time. It's big because it's a monopoly. They buy contracts. They buy out the little guy. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it's not. Just depends. I've worked with people who have worked for Disney. Awesome work, didn't get paid.
Okay, hold on one second. I think that because this description, Disney, is really perfect. I want to make sure everybody understands. Does anybody have any particular questions on this idea of us? Essentially, we know the songs, we know what to pay for, and you can't express any kind of dissent when you got to be careful.
But that's nonprofit. That's sometimes the face of nonprofit, when you'll get attached to these organizations and you'll believe, and you're like, yes, I want to help feed the homeless, or yes, I want to do this, or yes, I want to do that, because it's pulling into your heartstrings. There's several mechanisms that you're going to be attracted to, because we got to know, what do we have to, how do we think? What do we have to give with our hands? What can we do? How do we feel with our hearts, right? So there's a lot of things being advertised with you all the time. America, the corporation of, because there's two sides to America, right? There's the original, the land of the people, and then there's the corporate, right? And the corporate is what you've been trained under. And I'm not saying that one is bad or one's worse over the other. You just have to know how to navigate in it. And most of the time you don't know. You're living in the commercial side of everything. Everything is a business. As much as your school is telling you right now, no shade to Berkeley, It's a business. It's a business. They might say they care about you, they want you, and they might create all these resources to keep you safe. And, you know, and those are great things because that's what they're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, that tuition need to clear, right? Because if it don't, where you going? Back home? You know, it's so there's always a give and take. It's the same thing with the hospital system. At the end of the day, you have an emergency, but some need to say cha-ching, or services go down. And that's what and nonprofit is no different. Do not get caught up on words, because how you use words in your dialect, your community, may not be the same wording and the meaning when you're talking in legalese. Legalese is a different situation in itself. There's a difference between legal and lawful. Okay, so you have to start to be aware that how you speak, just like when we know about hidden rules, like I might go to my cousin's house and we might have our own thing, and I'm like, hey girl, da, 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 and we're speaking our own language, but I may speak completely differently here. I don't know you guys like that. I may use different, but just know the world that you really want to be aware of how you language is when you're in the world of legalese. And that's where things can get a little different. And you want to be mindful of whom you contract with, because everything really boils down to contract law. You want to study something? Study contract law. Because that's what it is.
Okay, let me pause you for another second. So going back to this idea of the park, because I really like that description of this kind of, you know, public-private partnership that we're either knowingly or unknowingly enacting and taking a part in, and thinking about liability. And also, like, if you get injured or if you get hurt, you're essentially taken out of the sight of the rides, such that you don't disturb the other customers in the park. And I'm wondering, to go back to how you described Mansfield and this kind of, you know, post-industrial economy that is now a prison economy, as you describe it, in a prison state, in a prison. Can you describe, in terms of that metaphor of the park, what is the prison economy in terms of metaphor of the park? Can you break that down a little bit?
Most people here, they don't know that they're in that simulation, because the prisons, they're kind of set a little bit away from the urbanized areas, right? So it looks as if it's out of sight, out of mind. But the truth is that we're all operating as if we're simulated on a plantation. We do not ask or advocate for ourselves, hardly ever. And when when we're an urban rural area, and really we're more rural, and I know that I'm probably going to sound really country to you guys, because I didn't know I had an accent until I start talking to other people, and I'm like, oh, I sound country. So if there's something you don't understand, like I might have a little Ohio twang, because it's really weird. Cincinnati sounds like the South. Appalachia sounds real twangy. People from Cleveland sound like they're from New York. It's like, I mean it when I say we're crazy. Okay. So we don't know. But if I say something and you need me to repeat it, just let me know. But we are more Appalachian than we are urban, but for those who live in that deeper Appalachian area, they might come to Mansfield, which has nothing. It's nothing compared to what you guys are used to. But it's a mindset. Ohio in itself is about 10 years behind California. So whatever you guys do in California that's progressive, it takes us about 10 years to get that started. Just to let you know how that goes. And that also goes for languaging in politics and policies and legislation and things like that. Usually it's about a 10-year gradual turn. It seems to be from California to Ohio rather than from New York to Ohio. But when we go to hospitals, we don't really ask, hey, we don't communicate with our doctors and say what's wrong with our bodies, because no matter what a doctor knows, you should know the most about your body, right? Even if you can't say it in the same way that they may say it, you should know if it hurts to breathe. You should know if your toe hurts. You should know if your head's hurting, right? You should be able to articulate it. But sometimes we see a commodification of residents where people are just going in and they're not knowing that they're even allowed to say, hey, this hurts, this, because they're looking for permission. And when an area has been primarily in poverty, and in Mansfield or Richland County, 70% of the residents here are eligible for job and family service fundings. That means they do not have enough money month to month to pay their bills. Whether they utilize those benefits or not, they're eligible, which means they're below the poverty guideline, which is likely that they're earning $15 an hour or less with a family of at least one adult and 2 children. Usually it's more than that. And $15 an hour doesn't stretch that far over here. Now, granted, our price of living is much cheaper than what you guys are dealing with in California. But at the end of the day, it doesn't add up. It doesn't compute. So even when you're going to job and family service agencies, it depends on how they treat you. And if you're not accustomed to asserting your authority, and you're not understanding of how policies work and how rules work and how things work, and that you have a voice, you are going to get what they give. And in a place as small as Mansfield is, things can get real petty real quick. That girl you used to go to high school with might be your caseworker, and you the one who stole her man, and now you need some benefits for you and your kids, and she don't like you because in the 9th grade her boyfriend liked you and and she don't approve your application. It happens. That's violence. When a mother cannot get benefits that she is allotted to, it's already been allotted to her, but she can't get benefits because someone just don't like her. She can't feed her children, but she don't know how to assert herself because she's wrapped in her main focus is feeding her children. She can't even think about legalese and contracts, and she can't think that way because you can't think when you're hungry. I guarantee you. When the last time you did well on a test and you didn't eat right? Right? Because you're gonna jostle yourself. We live on a farm. Ohio's technically a farm. It's all farmland, but yet 95% of the crops are for soy and corn that's inedible to humans. It's for livestock. 5% is only produced for produce. Yet we're a farmland, a very fertile farmland. So when I say that poverty is designed, I mean that, because hungry people make poor choices. They might steal. They might rob. They might fight you. Just like a dog in the street who hasn't eaten for days might bite you because it's in survival mode. Humans are no different. Or if you've had to only go to a grocery store, you can't walk to a grocery store. I live in an area on the south side and the north end of Mansfield. There's no grocery store you can walk to. They moved all those out. When my mother was young, and she was born in 59, her and my aunt, on the street around the corner from where I live now, this whole neighborhood was filled with fruit trees. Kids could walk to school and get a pear, get an apple, get cherries, get whatever, and they could just walk to school. Well, in the 70s, the city cut them down and said, well, they're too hard to maintenance. Well, when was the last time a tree needed your help to grow? That don't even make sense. But that's what they told people to justify the manipulation to ensure that people would have to purchase food where they said, because that's an act of war. If you look at any of the old wars, what do? They kill the livestock. They do different things to manage the poverty. And if I crumble your economic system, then that means you have to resource to me. These are acts of war. These are soft acts of terrorism. Now, may not like to say it like that, but guess what? They paying their bills. The ones who are in the poverty, they get to determine how they get to feel about it. And I'm one of those people. So that's what I feel like it is. So I don't always get smiles when I go into meetings. You see what I'm saying? They don't always like me.
Okay, so I want to respond to that. It sounds like you're describing in this entire kind of system of essentially a war on people's lives and well-being, at least in Ohio, but probably applicable to a lot of places. A lot of people, it sounds like you said, are not thinking about that. They're thinking about the day-to-day. They're hungry. They're trying to put food on the table for their own children. But some people may be actually aware of this kind of systemic violence that the masses of America basically play a role in. What can people do when they become, first of all, who becomes more aware of that? You know, is it the people enjoying the ride, or is it, who becomes more aware? And then once they're aware, what do they do about it?
Well, the entities at the top are the ones that are aware, because that's the puppet mastery of it all, right? So, and just like you're living, I'm living. I can't have and as hyper focused as I can be, I can't have my awarenesses everywhere at all times, right? Because you're living your life. Like if you have a final to study for, well, that's going to take a large amount of your focus, as it should. You might walk down the street and see somebody who's homeless, and you might not be able to be empathetic in that moment. Does it make you a horrible person? No, but we're all in this matrix together, surviving it in our own way. Now, it's just, so I don't want people to think like, just because you're not in it, that something's wrong with you. No, you didn't create it, but can you contribute to the resolution of it in your own way? Sure. It may not be a big way. It may be simply, most of the time, fixing yourself. That's where it starts. I mean, there's plenty of people who write checks and they don't have a clue of where those checks go, but in their mind, they wrote a check. And so they're sleeping, but they don't know where that went. How many times have people wrote a check to something that looked like feeding the children over in Africa? They don't have a clue where their money's going. You don't know. You just hope it gets to where it's supposed to get to, right? So
I want to ask people for questions, but I have another question for you first. Because a lot of people in this class, they're in design school, and so they're literally working on this question of how to design the park. Essentially, what that often means is how to give people a good experience. How to create an enjoyable ride, or a smoother ride, or to keep things relatively clean or beautiful, or whatever it is. How can we all, or perhaps particularly designers, actually design or change the design of the park, to go back to your original metaphor?
Well, you want to, safety is always going to be your concern. Okay. No matter what structure, no matter what landscape, no matter wherever you go, if safety is not secured, then it's going to fail. Okay. You can't learn. If a bomb goes off in your building, y'all got to get out of there, right? You've got to create, it's the same thing. So it has to be logical to wherever it is that you're focused on. So once you're looking at the safety aspect, because the people might be nose blind to the safety there. I'm sorry, my son has a dog. Me and him are we're not claiming each other right now because he drives me nuts and he is having a moment outside barking at people. So I'm sorry if you hear barking. But that's a different story.
Okay.
But just safety, you want to look at where are you placing parks? Where are you creating structures? How safe is it? Not just in a physical sense, but is it a safe, what is the energy that you're hoping for? And then for the people who you want to enjoy it, have you included their thoughts? Because you won't be able to make everyone happy, but is it collectively enough where people can rest? Like if it's like a water park they put here, it's not near me, but it's in Mansfield. That's not what we needed. That's not what we wanted. We wanted a pool. We wanted the public pools to be fixed so that children could go back to those sites that already existed, but it be safer where they could go swim. Well, the city decided to spend money adversely, differently, in a different direction to create a water park at a place that requires a membership in a location that nobody in the areas can walk to. So that's what I mean when I say be empathetic, because the people we had been working on this for a couple of years and we had done research and got the soft data. That's what you want. You're going to have your hard data, and that's the data that you're going to collect from statistics and all those points. And those are going to really help you with your feasibility studies and things of that nature. And those are awesome. But that soft data, that's the data that I would ask you, the people in the area. What do you like? What do you want? What are your needs? And there was enough data that was collected to say, hey, what we're getting is that the majority of people in these questionnaires, these surveys, these conversations, is that they miss kids being able to go play outside and go swimming in the summertime. They don't have a place to swim. But we've got 3 sites where there's pools that they're out of use. The city closed them down.
Is there ever a case where designers, or as you're alluding to, whoever was changing this infrastructure, adding this pool or a water park, where they're basically handing out breadcrumbs in the kind of toxic positivity that you've suggested, where they're basically saying, okay, we're going to work with these 5 nonprofits and find out what people want in this place, and then make a killing.
And you don't always know. You just don't know. Sometimes what I had to learn, and because Mansfield's so small, some of those advocates who appeared as friendlies for the community were that, and some were not. Some were secretly being manipulative behind closed doors because they had a kickback in some kind of way. It may not have been financially direct, but it may have been in another way, right? Because no matter what, we're still operating off of a barter system, right? In some form or another. There were a few that they were legit. They were advocating. They got the people's voice. They submitted the data. They did all the goodies, and they did their best. And then there was a few that they had designs in another direction, and then 6 months, 24 months later, because that's our time frame for community memory. Here, 6 months is a if it's not done in 6 months, then the community kind of has this forgetfulness about it. 24 months, it's lucky to have a program here that even lasts for 24 months. So they've been trained to let it go by that time. So that meaning the community as a whole will likely not bring it up again. And they know that. Okay, because they've been doing that for years.
I want to try to solicit questions from the audience here. So, everybody in this room, no doubt, is coming to this issue of civic and social responsibility and design from different places. But does anyone have any particular question on for Nyshia already?
Don't be scared, because I'll call on you.
You're just welcome here.
Where to? Just right here?
Yeah, just talk
Oh.
loudly now.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, I'm like really front and center. Could you talk more about soft data and like?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, maybe like how you go about that and like finding the missing stakeholders or yeah, just like how you get the soft data.
I talk to people. That's and that's a great question. So thank you for asking that. I've done a lot of different things because I'm a Gemini and I'm a weirdo. Okay, and I can't hide it. So I have a license in insurance for accident and health. It's not active. I don't use it right now, but I didn't use it to sell so much. I used it for educational purposes so that people in our community could get insured properly and also pathway them to life insurance and things of that nature. In that learning experience, it taught me how to look at sales models. I hate sales, but it's a very good skill because it teaches you to talk to people. It helps you to figure out ways to break ice. And that's where you're going to collect that soft data. And I use data. I'm collecting data all the time. I'm collecting data right now. And you have to just know that it's not going to come in an organized manner. Soft data does not come organized. It does not come structured. It comes in conversations with people. It comes when you're doing groceries and you're going to shop for groceries and you're being observant. It comes from you paying attention to whatever it is that you're paying attention to. So if you're looking to structure a park, well, who lives in the area around the area that has been identified to build the park? Well, how are you going to talk to those people? And you're going to have to learn how to change how you speak. You don't have to disappear and become an android, but you have to learn how to change how you speak for different audiences. If this was a group of 5-year-olds, I would speak differently. But trust me, their data is extremely important. Their input is vital. If this was a room of elders, I'm gonna be a little bit more yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. And I'm going to pay attention to what it is. But it also is a listening process. And as much as I talk, because I can talk, y'all, but I'm an excellent listener. And that's because I was nosy when I was a child and I was always watching adults and I'm like, look at that. I know who did that. I know who doing what. But you have to be a data collector. You have to know how to retain your notes. You have to know how to store your notes and then piece together your notes, because you may collect something a week from now. And it may be intricate to the work that you're doing 6 months from now, So if you know that collective area has like a community like board, or the kids over there on TikTok, or it's okay to look at their stuff. You have to look at the different communication levels. Most teenagers, young adults, they're going to use social media. You're going to need to pay attention to that. Personally, I hate social media, but I know it's important. I'm the only community organizer type person. I don't use social media. I don't touch it, but it's important. But when I'm consulting people, I let them know why it's important. It's not good for me personally, so I don't have one personally. And I'm not going to be impressive on paper. I'm not going to be certain things in certain ways. My strong suit is talking to people one-on-one. Once I get you one-on-one or in a group, I got you. That's my strength. So that's what I focus on. So I don't allow the social media side of things to distract me, because for me, that's what it would be. That would be me trying to put a lot of energy into something that doesn't put the same energy back into me. So until I am at that place of demand, my best sales work, because we're all selling something, a thought, a thing, a place, a service. My best sales tactic is talking to people one-on-one and in groups and getting to know them, because now you know me. Now you know Nyshia from Ohio. No matter what you do. Well, oh yeah, girl, hey, I know you're like, it's because I'm building those connections. And they're authentic, because even if you don't know what I do, you're like, oh yeah, that girl in the hair wrap. I mean, yeah, let me, if you ever find yourself in Ohio, you could be like, hey. And I'm like, you know, I would, you know, because that's, we're all here to help. We're helpers. And you have to be very careful, because technically you're really empaths. You just don't know it.
Okay, I mean, I wait a second, I want to take another question. Yeah, you might need to go.
Hi, I'm Brandon.
Hi.
I was just wondering, you said legalese versus waffle. I was just wondering what waffle is and what the difference is.
Ooh, child, that's a whole conversation. Ooh. Okay, that's a whole conversation. So we're not going to be able to get into all that today, because that's a whole different bear. Just know that your lawful is your private sector, and your legalese is your commercial sector. That's the main factor. Okay. And most of the time you're going to be operating in the commercial. That's where you're going to have your paperworks and your EINs and all this other jazz, right? But know that most people in poverty are operating in the private without recognizing it. You know, if I need a babysitter, I ain't going, you know, and I don't have the money, I might say, hey, Sharon, I need a sitter for Saturday. I'm gonna do your hair if you could watch my baby. Private. That's
Essentially talking about the difference between somebody having a, you know, like a corporate personhood and a bodily personhood at the same time.
Yeah, that's a whole different situation, right? Because in the commercial, you're operating your avatar. Technically, you are you. But if you don't know how to conduct you, and you don't know how you're operating your avatar, which is your corporate person, your all caps, which is whom your government refers to you as, right? And if you're not aware of how to legally operate your avatar, you will be subjugated to suffer whatever they want that avatar to subjugate, right? Because they want the person for there's two entities. There's you and there's your avatar. Now that, like I said, that's a whole different realm, and that's a whole lot of coffee and a little bit of wine, and you know, but just know when you are entering into legal contracts, you are entering your avatar. But if you do not know how to legally separate yourself from that legal avatar, you will suffer. If that avatar makes a mistake and you're not sure how to contract, that's how you go to jail.
I want to kind of underscore this. I mean, we're almost running out of time, but just because, you know, even from a design perspective, from a purely design perspective, there's always the design, there's the drawings and the whole legal corporate entity of the building or the park or whatever it may be, even the city. And then there's also the physical element of the landscape and the physical element of people using landscape and all those things. And it's really, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think in design school, rarely do people really think about the fact that in the United States, there's always a dialogue between them, even on a personal basis. So yeah.
And you got to remember, before the corporate side of things came to the States, which is that 1619 era where Dutch West Indies came through to build the corporate side of transatlantic slavery, that people were operating in the private. They were operating in tune with each other. They were, hey, Alan, you know, I built this chair. Would you, you know, you want me to build? Yeah, I got a they traded. So in poverty, you're going to see people operating more in the private, whether they're acknowledging that or not, or whether they're aware. They're using their senses. Grandma still might grow vegetables in the backyard, and she's giving them out, and trading them for a ride to the hospital, to the grocery store when she needs to go. Or grandma might babysit the kids so that her son or daughter goes to work. But in exchange, there's different interweaving exchanges. Whereas when you're out of poverty, you're going to be more in the corporate or the commercial side of things, because you're paying for services outside of your network. And that the nonprofit is no different. It's all about contracting. If you know no other law, get you somebody who can help you read a contract. I'm learning. This is not stuff I knew a long time ago. I'd be a lot better off than I am now. I'm only just now coming into understanding certain things, and I am at the infancy of it. But
Okay,
I was operating super backwards because I'm just out here. I just want to help people. I just want to make things better. I just want to sprinkle my glitter.
Well, Nyshia, I want to thank you because we're actually out of time. But thank you very much for coming in today. Maybe we can just have a round of applause.
Thank you. I hope this was helpful.
And I will share your email, or do you want to share your email right now, or no? Or just
No, you can share it. You can share it because that way it's clear. The info at NKB Lab at gmail.com.
So
and the best way to, if anyone were to email me, just say, put Alan's name in there. That way I know who. That way I can treat you special.
Okay.
Because sometimes I'm like, I don't know who that is.
It's a private person, not just a corporate person. Okay, well, thank you very much again, and I have to let everybody go to their next class.
Okay.
But thank you very much for coming in, and if you come to Berkeley, you can meet everybody in person.
Well, I appreciate you guys tolerating me. Thank you.
Okay.